Today, we're going to dismantle the way we think about wealth creation. For decades, we've been told that success means building a consumer brand, launching a software company, or buying prime real estate. But if you look at where the smartest capital in the world is moving today, the game has changed. The future isn't about the products anymore. It's about the physical network that make those products possible. And this is where things get interesting. Take the average retail investor. They're focused on residential speculation, studying city maps and calculating which apartment might generate a 10 to 15% return. But institutional capital is playing an entirely different game. They're not buying the box. They're asking where the next $1 trillion of global trade, manufacturing, and AI infrastructure is going to flow. And they're buying the massive raw infrastructure corridors that will eventually create 10 more of those high rises. Section 1. Trade networks and physical bottlenecks. To understand why the shift is happening, we need to zoom out and look at the massive reorganization of global trade happening right now. We are moving away from an era of frictionless globalization and entering an era of strategic autonomy. Countries are redesigning their supply chains for resilience, security, and competitiveness. Think friendshoring, nearshoring, and de-risking. Just look at the world today. The United States is using tariff as geopolitical leverage. Europe is protecting strategic industries while balancing free trade. The United Kingdom, post-Brexit, is aggressively pursuing new trade partnerships, while Canada is actively reducing its dependence on a single export market. What this means is that trade negotiations are no longer just about moving goods. They are increasingly about deciding where things are physically built, stored, and secured. In every supply chain reshuffle, every relocated factory and every new logistics corridor ultimately requires one fundamental thing: land. Brands can be copied, brands can fade, but physical bottlenecks, export hubs, freight corridors, and industrial ecosystems are incredibly difficult to replicate. Increasingly, the power belongs to those who control these physical choke points. Section 2. AI is physical infrastructure. Now you might be thinking, doesn't the AI boom change this physical reality? Doesn't everything simply move into the cloud? In fact, AI is accelerating this race for physical infrastructure faster than almost anything we've seen before. But here's perhaps the biggest misconception about artificial intelligence today. Most people picture a sleek software interface on their phone. You type a prompt and an answer appears almost magically. But the reality, the digital revolution has collided with the physical world. A simple ChatGPT prompt triggers a massive chain reaction. Thousands of GPUs, advanced semiconductors, enormous data centers, staggering amount of electricity, and ultimately thousands of acres of land. AI isn't floating in the sky, it's heavy industrial infrastructure. Because AI generates enormous amounts of heat and consumes power at the scale of the entire cities. Its growth is ultimately constrained by physical resources. We're talking about gigawatt-scale power demands and massive cooling requirements, forcing companies to move beyond traditional groundwater sources towards treated wastewater, advanced liquid cooling, and even coastal desalination. This is why coastal regions are emerging as prime AI real estate. AI infrastructure demands access to subsea data cables, energy grids, logistic networks, and semiconductor ecosystems. And that's the crucial takeaway. There is no magical cloud. A modern AI data center isn't just a commercial building. It's a power plant attached to a supercomputer, attached to a massive warehouse, often requiring hundreds of acres of land to operate. And that's exactly why technology companies and investors are suddenly so interested in massive tracts of land. Section 3. The national security resource race. Because AI depends on physical infrastructure, governments are waking up to a stark reality. They can no longer leave this entirely to private companies. Nations understand that whoever controls chips, energy, and compute gains extraordinary economic and strategic leverage. That's why governments are beginning to treat AI infrastructure with the same strategic importance that previous generation assigned to oil and nuclear technology. AI infrastructure is rapidly becoming a strategic asset. From logistics and cybersecurity to scientific discovery and defense technologies, its influence spans entire economies. Without access to chips, energy, and compute infrastructure, nations risk losing technological and economic competitiveness. This is precisely why governments and alliances are moving aggressively to secure critical supply chains. Section 4. Why billionaires buy rural land? This brings us back to our original question. Why is the smartest capital in the world buying rural and peri-urban land instead of prime city real estate? Because it completely flips conventional wisdom. The old model was simple. Cities grew, people moved in, demand rose, and real estate appreciated. But large capital understands something different. Cities capture wealth, while industrial corridors and physical network often create it. The new capital cycle begins with government infrastructure. Then comes the expressway, then the industrial corridor, factories, data center, jobs, and finally housing. In other words, the city is the last stage of the capital cycle. The average investor buys at the last step, the billionaires buys at the first, and we are watching this happen in the real time. Consider this figure, 13,000 acres. That's the amount of land being acquired by single Indian state, Uttar Pradesh, along its expressways for industrial and logistics development. Institutional capital isn't buying the middle of nowhere by accident. They're buying it because they understand that once you add power, fiber, transportation, and water, the middle of nowhere can become the center of the next economy. Section 5, India's opportunity beyond China. As the global supply chain reshuffle collides with the massive land and energy demands of AI, India has emerged as one of the world's most strategic geographies. In many ways, it's becoming a development laboratory for the future of infrastructure. Major economies are not engaging with India simply because of its 1.4 billion consumers. They're looking at India because it sits at the crossroads of Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Add its ability to work simultaneously with the US, Europe, Japan, and the Gulf, along with the vast land availability. And India becomes a natural hub for resilient manufacturing and global technology infrastructure. But there is a critical warning here. India cannot succeed by becoming a cheaper version of China. To compete at an industrial and geopolitical scale, India must move beyond the short-term mindset and build for quality, reliability, and long-term trust. Look, Jugaad is great for survival, but AI and global infrastructure cannot run on shortcuts and weak standards. To win, India must build a model based on quality, compliance, environmental responsibility, and long-term trust. Because the customer of the future isn't asking what is cheapest. They're asking who can deliver consistently for the next 20 years. And that brings us to the real challenge. This isn't just about engineering talent or allocating land. It's a physical engineering problem. Can countries build the gigawatts of clean energy, the water system, the transmission grids, and the industrial ecosystem required to support the unprecedented scale? Because if they can solve those physical bottlenecks, they don't just participate in the global economy, they become indispensable to it. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you hear about a major trade deal, a new industrial corridor, or the latest AI breakthrough, don't just look at the software, look at the ground, look at the land, the power line, the data centers, and the logistic hub. Because the cloud doesn't exist in the sky. The real question is, who owns the ground beneath it?